sure that's out there. I got like Command Central over here, man. I got like my two computers. I got my iPad going on, man. It's like I wish I had money to hire like a production assistant, but
Seriously.
we ain't there yet. We ain't there yet, but it's coming.
Oh, it's coming, man. Speak that mug in existence.
No doubt, my brother. No
Yeah.
doubt.
Keep talking. You
Oh,
talk about it every day. It'll come true
yes, sir.
in no time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to get started. Come on in. Come on in. Come on into the room. Oh yeah, see, you gotta make sure that microphone's down. Get a little feedback. Make sure my YouTube is rolling. I got my Facebook rolling. And let me just make sure my Twitter is rolling. All right, all right. There we go. All right, we rolling, brother. All right, let's get it popping. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what is up? What is up? Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition of the 285 podcast, part of our September series, self improvement series that we are doing. And we have a very special guest with us this evening. Well, it's more nighttime where I'm at. It's probably dusk or evening where you are in Huntsville, Alabama.
Mhm.
Tonight we are talking about mental health, man. We got a heavy one on. We got a heavy one tonight, and I'm excited to have my co-host on with me tonight. He is a good friend of mine. We go back 20 years or so, right?
Yeah.
Freshman year at Oakwood College, like
1997.
yeah, you did. Oh my gosh, 20 years, man, 20 years.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yep.
I'm excited about this conversation, man. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about um, what you're doing, man. Kudos to you. We're going to talk a little bit about your business. We're going to talk about the mental health field. Just 1 second. My production assistant didn't get my lights. There we go. There we go. I got my lights. Now you can see me. JP, what's going on, my guy?
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Hey,
Turn my lights on too.
yeah, there we go. So
Yes,
John
sir.
Ruffin is a licensed counselor, and did I see that you just received some new credentials, man?
Yes. So, and when you receive your LPC, before you can get your LPC, you're ALC, which is you're an associate licensed person. You're trying to get there, and you have to be supervised by a senior LPC.
Okay.
And so I just received my S on my LPC. So now I'm a senior supervising LPC. So now I supervise those up and coming ALCs that want to be LPCs.
Awesome, man.
So I'm excited
Congratulations,
about
man.
that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what's up. So JP is the owner of A Touch of Peace Counseling. He is a business owner. I'm so proud of this guy, man. I've like I said, we went to college together, so I've always followed the journey. And talk a little bit about the business, man, getting it started and the butterflies and the journey. And you're a business owner, right?
Oh
Talk a
yeah.
little bit about getting the business up and running, man, and how it feels, the anxiety, give me all
Man,
of
that's
that.
the whole show in and of itself. I try to give you the brief elevator version.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I was working in the field. I was working in the field since 2001. And I enjoyed the field, but there's always been that drive to, you know, do everything that the field has to offer. Teach, own my own practice, do conferences, so forth, seminars, write books. And so I've always dreamed to kind of reach every facet of the field. About 6 years ago, I was working at the mental health center, and they did something that really shocked me. So they were trying to raise productivity. So they gave everybody their productivity for the year. They let them see exactly what they brought in versus what they made. and it was shocking. I had brought in like 3 or 4 times more than they paid me.
Hey, if it don't make
So,
dollars, it don't make sense, my guy.
I'm like, really? I'm like, oh, I can do this. So, so I eventually changed jobs. That I went to a job that wasn't as demanding as the mental health center, and at the same time, I started a part-time practice. I started with 2 clients, and just built from there. Just started advertising and word of mouth, and eventually, probably around year 2, it took me about 2 years to start really turning a profit. But about year 2, I was competing with my income at my steady job, and I was doing it part time. So
Yeah.
it took me another additional 3 years to convince my wife to actually let my job go, but it actually took me 2.
Okay.
So that's probably a short version of how I started my business.
Dope,
I
man.
started with a friend who was already in practice. He let me rent a room, and then it kind of just grew from there.
Awesome, man. Shout out to the lovely Miss Ruffin, man. All right.
Yes.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts, man, talk a little bit about your family, man. I know you got 3 beautiful girls and your wife, man. Go ahead and big up your family a little bit, man. This is a
Yeah.
family show.
So the love of my life, my wife, we've been married for 14 years. It seems like yesterday. I know you just celebrated an anniversary.
Yeah, lucky
14
lucky number
years. So
15,
congrats.
man. Lucky number
Yeah,
15.
that's right. So you got me 1 year before you. It's all
Hey,
good.
I remember we all started falling like dominoes. Like, shout
Sure
out to
did.
all the guys in our group. Sean,
Hmm.
Moses, like, we all got married like in like a 5 year span. And I remember
Yep.
one of our guys at our wedding, Moses, at his wedding, he turned around and looked at me and threw the garter and it hit me right in the chest. And like a
I
year
remember that.
later, who knew I was right there uh getting married, man. So
Oh yeah.
salute to you and me on 14 years, man. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and all our guys are still married to the same woman, man. So
Can you believe
we
that?
we must have done something right. But nah, that was just a good 5 years. And then I had 3 daughters. My oldest, Olivia, she is 11 years old. My middle child, Amber, she is 10. And then I have a baby who's 2 years old. Her name is
Gotcha.
Isabella. Call it
Awesome, man.
Izzy. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome,
So
man.
I love them, man. I wasn't blessed with a boy, but we keeping it alive though, man. My hope
That's what's
for
up,
my
man.
girl.
Hey, for those of you who are on Facebook, make sure you go by his Facebook business page. We have it up, facebook.com. A Touch of Peace Counseling, all one word. Who put that together?
Yeah.
A rapper? All one
Yeah.
word. A touch, a touch of peace counseling, man. Make sure you go by and click the like button on that Facebook page and show
Please
him some
do.
love.
Yeah.
Um, I want to start about. I want to start in the beginning. I gave you the outline. We talk a little bit about uh, COVID, right? And so
Sure.
2020 has been a year. It has been a interesting year, and I want to get into some other stuff, but I want to find out a little bit about what differences have you seen or have you noticed since that March when COVID really hit? Have you seen like an influx of like depression, anxiety, mental? I mean, like, what does the business look like since COVID hit?
So COVID is like for me, um, a big brother who won't leave you alone. You're in a room, you having a nice warm blanket on, you're just happy as you can be, no care in the world, and all of a sudden this big brother comes in and snatches the covers, and now you're just like cold and shivering and miserable. I think what happened when COVID hit. When COVID hit, it was like it was unexpected. I mean, even with the warnings that we were getting in 2019, November, December, even in January, we really just could not expect what was coming. And so a lot of people now, I think what it did was it just magnified problems that people are dealing with. Because here's the problem: COVID's not over. So we're not dealing with the aftermath of COVID. We're engaged. We're like dead middle center dealing with COVID-19. So the people that are coming in are not people who are dealing with the aftermath and they're trying to heal. It's people who's trying to manage.
Mm. So
So
they're trying to keep float.
yeah, they're trying to manage. So we're trying to manage marriages. We're trying to manage anxiety. We're trying to manage depression. Most of these issues were already there prior to COVID. But like I said, COVID's like a big brother who won't leave you alone. Now it's just hitting you constantly bugging you, and is relentless and won't let up.
Mm.
And so the people that are coming in is because their issues have been magnified and they're trying to manage it right now. So I get a lot of managing issues. But yes, more people are coming in.
Mm.
Definitely. More people are taking mental health seriously because they realize that they have to.
I forgot to ask you this earlier. And shout out to everybody in all the chat rooms, in the YouTube, in the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the Periscope. Let us know where you're checking in from, where you're listening from. We'll give you a shout out. If you have any questions or comments, put those in the chat. We'll try to get to those regarding mental health. I forgot to ask you earlier. Tell me what type of services that you guys offer at A Touch of Peace Counseling.
Okay. So um, I'm going to go technical and then I'll break it down. So I
Okay.
deal with mostly all axis one diagnoses. So those are going to be your anxieties, depression, ADHD, marriage and family, um, just about anything that you could think of in those arenas that people may be dealing with. Problem solving, just encouragement, dealing with um, just everyday life issues, dysfunctions, and so forth. We typically don't manage access to diagnosis.
Okay.
So a little more about your personality disorders. We can't help be a part of the management team. But when you start talking about access to diagnoses, which is personality disorders, you want to build a strong team where you have a psychiatrist, you have a psychologist, and maybe even a counselor that is working with you on a regular basis because there's a lot more to manage there.
Appreciate that. Shout out to our guy Cool Mo. Mo listening, checking in from Tampa, Florida. Check out our guy. Yeah, let us know where you guys are listening from, man. We appreciate the love on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, Periscope. We appreciate the love. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to get with them. And again, I'm speaking with John Ruffin, a licensed counselor who runs A Touch of Peace Counseling in Huntsville, Alabama. P, I wanted to start a little bit about trauma.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about trauma. I was on a call this week with a group of guys that I'm in, a kind of a support group, and one of the presenters came in and he talked a lot about trauma and the different types of trauma. If you can, give us a kind of a synopsis about trauma. Like, what are some of the types of trauma, especially that people are kind of dealing with during this time?
Okay. So trauma in and of itself is when there's this unreconcilable event, something that causes an unexpected pause or I'm trying to explain it better than that. An unexpected pause or maybe a stop in a person's function.
Okay.
So the person is going about their day and then all of a sudden something that was unexpected, something that took them out of their control, kind of put a pause in it. And it did it in a way that caused damage.
Mm.
And so as an individual, we usually can process most events that happen. Everything has a logical cause and effect. But every once in a while, we might come across something that we can't process.
Mm.
And that's where trauma usually comes in and it enters. And it causes what we call a unresolvable conflict. And so while that trauma happens, we're trying to figure out, we're trying to process it, we're trying to deal with it. And we might deal with it through what we call defense mechanisms.
Okay.
So our body develops these defense mechanisms, these safety nets that protect us from danger. And a lot of times they're instinctive. So if someone was to come into your house and you heard a loud bang, you're going to, you know, depending on your fight or flight, you're going to either hide or you're going to run towards the noise. And so what happens is that we try to put these defenses up to try to help us deal with whatever is going on in that trauma. But sometimes those defenses are ineffective. And that's when the trauma becomes damaging to us and it causes an unresolved emotional issue.
I learned about something this week called secondary trauma. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that secondary trauma? I don't have a good memory enough to remember everything the guy was talking about. But talk a little about secondary trauma and what that is.
So we can pass trauma down, and you think about generational curses, for example. So we can secondary trauma could be watching someone else go through trauma, or someone describing a trauma and you're experiencing it. You know, and so we can kind of vicariously go through and imagine that trauma. We have a very active imagination, you know, and we can imagine what that trauma may feel like to the point that it impacts us and we experience the same damaging qualities that comes from that trauma.
So you're saying that something that my father may have done, or my mother, or somebody in my family may have done, will have an effect on me as kind of like a byproduct that's secondary trauma.
If you can experience it from an onlooker point of view.
Okay.
So you're thinking more of a genetic. Can we pass down genetics that's based off of trauma? And I would definitely say yes, but that's another issue.
Okay.
But when you can be an onlooker of trauma or a secondhand experiencer of trauma
Okay.
and get the same effects. It's like someone coming to you and telling you a story about someone getting brutally hurt or murdered. You know, if they can describe it in a way where you can imagine the whole scene and you are just as impacted as they are and you didn't even see it.
Hmm. Um, we all have dealt with something difficult today. I'm speaking, of course, about Breonna Taylor and what has transpired. Um, and I wanted to ask you this: is it possible? And I know that, and I'm speaking, I guess, more specifically to African Americans. When we see things like people dying on the internet, a la George Floyd, a la people getting shot in like seeing videos, and when we even hear about something like Breonna Taylor, where the cops can barge into the wrong house and shoot somebody dead, is there a possibility that that will have a trauma on to people? I don't want to say like us, or like what are the effects of seeing these types of images and hearing these types of things repeatedly?
Oh man, you're asking several important questions, and you have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
almost answer them differently. So let me try to break it down. So the first thing I heard is, can we be affected by someone else's dilemma? Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Especially if we can relate to them. You know, when you look at Brianna, who do you see?
My
If you see
mother, my sister.
yourself, or if
Yeah.
you see your sister, or you see your auntie, or you see your cousin, and you then you hear her story, and
Hmm.
you're like, man, that could have been me. I think a few years ago, maybe it was Trayvon Martin, and even the president was like, that could have been my son.
Yeah.
You know, and what he was saying was is that I can relate to his situation. And so, because I can relate, because he has markers that remind me of myself, I experience his trauma a little differently. than someone who can't relate, who don't see him as someone that could be them, that they could be placed in. That's why when we see images of, let's say, someone from a different country who's starving, we can't relate. We're like, yeah, that's terrible, but we can't relate. How many times have you seen that and still kept your pocketbook closed? Because you might not be able to relate. But it's a lot different when you can say, oh man, that could have been my son or my child or my daughter or my sister. Then all of a sudden it impacts us differently. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just because she's Black, because there's a lot of Black people that just can't relate to her. So it's really impacting those who can relate. They see something that is similar and that they can relate to, and it makes them empathize with her and her situation. And that's why you see people who don't know her that are so hurt. In any of these situations, you look and you see someone, you say to yourself, that person don't even know them. Why are they crying? They just putting on a show. But in actuality, what's really going on is that they can relate. They don't have to know them to be able to relate to their scenario or their situation. Another thing, though, is, and I've talked to different races as well, we all can relate to feeling threatened by the cops. I don't know an African American male in my age group who has not been stopped by the cops just because they look suspicious.
Yeah, that is really real. Like, and we've man, you like we can go back and tell stories. Like, we're not gonna go down that road, you know,
Seriously.
because it might turn into a counseling session for both of us. But
Seriously.
you talk about the relatability, right? You talk about the relatability. And I remember when Trayvon died, and that was for me when my world was totally different, because I had a son that was he was young. I think he may have been like 2 or 3, or he was really young. And I remember like feeling this type of heaviness. And I'm like, why am I feeling this heaviness? I don't even know dude. I don't even know Trayvon. All I knew, like, there was something about that situation that was holding. And that night, I promise, I remember it like it was yesterday, P. It was a Saturday night. It was raining. I was rocking my son to sleep, and I could not stop crying. Like, that thing hit me like a ton of bricks. Now, whenever I hear about George Floyd or people getting shot or people that look like me or look like my son, I will not watch it. I'll be like, yo, don't put that stuff on my timeline. Like, don't I'm not gonna deal with that, because it's like it's too close to home, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%, man. I think one of the reasons why Floyd uh, hit so hard to us, and it wasn't just what happened to him, but it was, honestly, it was the young man who was talking to the cops, trying to plead for them to stop. I could relate because everybody asked themselves, what would I have done if I was right there? And
Right.
I've searched and searched, and I'm telling you, outside of bum rushing the cops, which we would all hope we would do, I would relate to what he said. It hit me hard because I could relate to what that young man was doing. He was in his power. He didn't foresee what was happening, but he knew it was wrong, and he did everything. He pleaded, and he everything he could possibly do to make them aware. And as a counselor, I think he did it. There was no better way for him to do it. I mean, he used every tactic, every technique that I, as a counselor, would have used.
Mm.
Like, yo, you can let him up. Yo, you're gonna kill him. Yo, I understand that chokehold. I know what you're doing. I get it. You're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna hate what you're doing. Like, I mean, he said everything that even I, as a counselor, would have used, and that's why for me that hit hard because I was like, I can relate to him. I
Wow.
related to him and what he was doing trying to stop him.
I still have not seen the video. Like, I refuse to watch it.
Yeah.
I will not allow myself to go there. Like I can't, and I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's a defense mechanism or a way that I just kind of shield my emotions. Like I can't do it. Like I've seen pictures and I know enough of what went down. But that's crazy how you mentioned that, man.
Yeah.
Um, the effects of trauma, and you talked about a lot of times you develop some type of defense, right? And um, what are some of the effects of trauma that people can have and they may not even be aware of? Like, we can talk and we can go down the rabbit hole of secondary trauma and this, that, and the other. But what are some of the effects of trauma that people may have, but they don't even realize that they have?
Man, I can go a lot of different places, but lack of sympathy and love.
Mm,
How many people are afraid to love because they've been hurt?
wow, that's a good one.
I get it all the time. Yeah, I have relationships, and they're lacking the ability to love each other because they've been hurt in prior relationships.
Mm,
and so if you don't deal with that trauma, and that's just one aspect. Let's talk about anger. You know what I mean? I know people every person I know who have anger issues been through trauma.
wow, wow.
Been
And
through
the thing,
trauma. That's a defense mechanism.
what are some other defense mechanisms? You said anger. You said what are some other defense
Denial,
mechanisms? Denial.
um, you know, uh, uh, um, behavior lacks, behaviors of I don't care, standoffish, um, you know, uh, changing personality types. I mean, there's so many. There's some actual names. I mean, I should have got a list. There's actual names we've identified in the counseling field, and there's probably about 20 or 30 that we've identified and dealt with. And maybe I'll pull that up as we're talking and come back to it. But there are all types of defense mechanisms that we use. Some that are healthy,
Hmm.
some that aren't.
Somebody
There's
somebody asked, "Is laughing a defense mechanism? Could laughing
yeah,
be like a defense
oh yeah,
mechanism?"
that's actually mine.
Really?
It
Hey,
is.
let me get my pad. Tell me more about that, P.
Laughing is a defense mechanism because sometimes people get uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
they've learned just through experience that if they laugh a little bit, it'll calm them down, or it might
Mm.
calm everybody. Joking. I know people who tell jokes, and I have to catch myself because I'll get clients and they're saying something serious, but they're saying in a joking way like, "Oh yeah, I got raped." But he ain't like me. I'm like, yo, you just told me you got raped.
Wow.
But that's their way of dealing with that trauma. And so, yeah, we have all kind, and it comes out. We have all kind of defense mechanisms, and I'm not saying defense mechanisms are bad,
Yeah.
but we do
Just
need to be aware of them. We can't rely on them and think that they're going to resolve. They're only there to protect us. They're not there to resolve the conflict.
gotcha. So,
And so people rely on them.
and I think that we tend to kind of paint defense mechanisms with the broad stroke and just be like, oh, that's bad. Like it's interesting that you said like it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of a way how our body is built, how our minds are built, like to cope. Like our minds are this cornucopia of just like things that we haven't even understood, like how complex the mind is, man. It is just
Yeah,
an amazing type of thing.
it is.
Um, we talking about trauma and the different types of trauma, and if somebody was if you were I guess were looking to recover from trauma, and I guess there's
Yeah.
different types of trauma. Talk a little bit about the recovery of trauma. Does it always start in counseling? Is there something that they just need to look head on? Or someone asked, can you recover from the effects of trauma, or is it something that you just deal with your whole life?
No, no, no. You can recover from trauma, but you want to have someone. Shout out to my counselors. You want to have someone who can walk you through the process. And what that means is, and sometimes it doesn't always have to be a counselor, but a good friend can do it. But you need to have some kind of resolution, some kind of action plan that helps you deal with that trauma so that you can allow it to be closed or to be dealt with or to be resolved. And that means that you have to see what happens with trauma is that we let it go for so long.
Mm.
And when we let it go for so long, it starts to go into our subconscious and we start incorporating it into our lives in intricate ways. We incorporate it into our survival. We incorporated it into our need to feel loved, our accomplishment, even understanding ourselves. And so when we do that, it's harder to untangle. So if you hit trauma when it first hit and you resolve it, it's a lot is even though it's still difficult, it's a lot easier to put it to rest than when you've allowed it to sit and fester for a long period of time, because then it starts to intertwine with your hierarchy of needs.
Got you. So when we look at, and I'll go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier about those images that we see on TV, the things that we see on the news that is just so negative, and you say that that can affect us in a way. Um, how is it that somebody can deal with all of that? Because I mean, you look at 2020 in a nutshell. It's like don't even and the thing is, Pete, I don't even really watch the news. I don't
Yeah,
even watch
yeah,
Fox News, CNN. I mean, I don't watch any of that stuff. But I still find a heaviness that I have to deal with. And I'm actually in the midst of looking up a counselor as well. I've been to counseling several times,
yeah.
and I want to talk about the stigma of counseling. How can
Yes.
people deal with all of these things and these images that are happening on a daily basis? It seems.
All right. So this is a little bit more complicated because first, if we're looking at 2020, it's not over.
Yeah.
So when you're in the middle of trauma, you really want to brace yourself.
Mm,
You want to, and this is where a good counselor can come in place. You want to start mentally bracing yourself for what could happen. You want to emotionally brace yourself. So what does that look like? So that looks like, okay, so 2020 isn't over, flu season is about to come in, an election is about to happen. Anything can happen at this point. We have no clue. What you want to do is hold on to what you know you can control. You need to
mm,
get grounded, right? What is grounded? I know how to make good choices. I know who I can turn to. I know I'm doing everything that I possibly can to prevent this from happening. I am strengthening any areas that are weaknesses for me. I'm going to do my part. And what that does is it allows you to have a cutoff on how much trauma you allow to come in. See, we all have
mm.
to have a cutoff. We have to be able to say, I can't deal with more than this. So I'm going to deal with what I can and let the rest deal
Let
with
the
it.
rest go.
And that's a healthy mind. When you're in the middle of trauma, that's about the best, healthiest mindset that you can have. Is okay. What can I control? What do I have control over? What am I doing? Am I doing the best that I can? Do I have everything in place that I can think of or that I can research on? And the second is here are my cutoffs. I can't do more than what's healthy for me. If it starts to get here are my cutoffs. If it's starting to get unhealthy. If I'm watching TV every day, the news every day, that's getting unhealthy. It's just keeping me from moving forward. It's unhealthy, and I have to have that cutoff, and I have to have people around me that can help me maintain where my cutoffs are, and that's where good accountability partners, good family, friends. That's where they come in and they can help with okay, enough's enough. Stop watching TV.
You
Stop getting it. Get out of your head.
we talked a little bit about this before we went live, and we talked about structure and having putting things in a proper place, and
Hmm.
that's kind of what we were speaking to earlier. There's some people that I follow on social media, and all they do is just post bad news after bad news. Like they'll post like 10 or 12 Trump articles, you know what I'm saying? Like somebody's mama died, like they got a cat that has three legs, like and you look at these people like, look, man, you need to go take a break. I like you need a hug, you need to go shoot some ball, you need to find a center and find a balance, you know. Um
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, like today, I got the Breonna Taylor news, and it was heavy. I was carrying it at work, and I was trying to get through my work day, and it was good because I work with kids, and so they're able to kind of liven it up and kind of take the seriousness or that weight that you carry at times. But after dinner and everything, yo man, I sat down, I hopped on the PS4, man. Like you gotta have that balance, you gotta have the things that take away that stress. Because man, if you try to carry all that thing, you will stumble and fall. Um,
So there's three things you need to do
okay,
when dealing with trauma effectively. Number
okay.
one, you don't ignore it. You develop a strategy for it. So
Say that
okay,
again. That's a good one.
you don't ignore it. You develop a strategy for it. All right. So here's a good example. So we see social unrest is happening. You have to have you need to have, and you can problem solve with your team. Everyone needs a team, and that's family, friends, therapist, doctor, confidences, all those. You have a team. And you say, okay, here's the problem. Here's what I am committed to doing about it. Here's how I'm going to deal with it. I have a plan. So even though it's coming, you can center yourself because you can say, I have a plan. So that's the first thing. You don't ignore it, you strategize. The second thing you do is you develop your cutoff, like we talked about earlier. You have to have a cutoff. Okay, I can only do this much. This is what's healthy for me. I can only do this much. And then you have to have a way to measure it. So anytime it comes, so right now we have, Brianna, but we know someone else is coming down the pipeline, right?
Yeah,
You know this, right? So when they do, you can have that trauma all over again, or you can say, "Oh, I have a strategy for this. I know what my plan is. I know what I'm doing to deal with this. I'm getting out the vote. I'm being active with my police community. I'm speaking up for people's rights and education of the police force. I'm doing my part. So yes, this is coming, but I'm already at work, so I'm okay. I know it's going to come. It's almost like playing chess. Like I know I'm going to lose a couple more pieces, but I know my strategy is going to be to win the war. So even though I know some of this stuff is coming, and I know that's harsh because you're like, you mean I got to accept that more people is going to die? Yes.
yeah, for real.
Yeah, more people are going to die. Guaranteed. More people are going to die over this racial issue. That is guaranteed. Now, if you try to fight all that head on, it's going to drive you crazy. Or you can strategize to position yourself that at some point you cut it off.
You said a
But
word there,
you
brother.
have to you have to be intelligent. See what's happening is social media, news, all those, they're throwing us off because they're keeping us emotionally driven. And when you're emotionally driven, you can't think logically. Most of your emotions are housed in areas of your brain that has nothing to do with your frontal lobe, and that's where higher thinking comes. And so when you're instinctively emotional, you cut off your ability to be able to think clearly. So you can't strategize or plan or do anything like that because you're so emotionally engulfed. Like, I got to do something now. Another person died. I got to do something now. And if you go that way, you're going to be impulsive and emotional. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to end up losing.
Mm,
But if you come with a strategy, you come with a plan, you accept the reality that this is happening, and you got to find the cutoff valve or be able to position yourself to cut it off, then you can move with purpose and you end up having more strength than just allowing the trauma to just keep hitting you.
that's deep, man. Did you give me a number three or no? What was the third one?
Oh, the third one was measurement.
Getting old, man. Getting old, man.
I know, right?
I was like, I was trying to like put them on the screen. I was like, wait a minute, did he give me a 3, or am I not listening to him? What's the third
No,
one
no, no.
again?
Measure success because you want to be able to say, I'm doing it. Like, so, for example, someone the other day, I'm moving my mom. She's moving back down here from West Virginia. And
Wow. Okay.
I'm telling a little bit about my business, but it's for a point. So, so part of my brother is up there in West Virginia. He's supposed to be loading my mom up, and I purchased the truck to bring her down. And he told me the other day, he was like, "Man, it's easy to throw money at it. I'm the one doing most of the work." Oh, so I'm like, oh, at first it hit me like I got angry, and then I was just like, I'm telling you, because the real story is that, she's moving into, my mother-in-law suite at my house, and I had to get that mug ready. So I had to clean out my garage. I had to break down some stuff. I had to make space. I had to sell some things. I had to give some stuff away. I had to throw some stuff away, and I've been working for the last 2 weeks to get ready for it. And I had to measure it. I had to measure success, and I'm telling myself, I'm like, wait a minute, he tripping. Not only am I, doing work and getting money, I'm not complaining. He the one with the issue. Why am I tripping? And then it went away. And just for good measure, I bought a ticket to West Virginia, so I'm gonna go up there and help and drive her down. And I'm gonna look at him and say, okay. What did you do?
Hey,
But that's the petty side of me, man. But measurement, you get what I'm saying? Measurement is key. Measurement is key. You want to be able to say you're doing something so that when people put that reality in front of you, that, oh, this is crazy, this is too much, nobody's doing anything, you can sit back and say, no, I am. You might not see it, but I do.
Hey, shout out to your brother, man. I can imagine you two going back and forth saying that, man. That's what made it that's what made it that much more funny.
He gets mad at me, man, because I'll be winning.
Hey, shout out to your cousin checking us out. She was on the show last week, man. Everyone, if you didn't check out last week's show, go to facebook.com/285 and check out the show we had with Tanya Nicole. It was a good show, so make sure y'all check that out. I want to talk a little bit about the stigma of getting help, the stigma of counseling. You and I come from backgrounds of faith, and and a lot of times people always say, "Oh, just pray. You don't need to talk to nobody." Like, and that could be detrimental. Like, and I really believe that for a large part of my life. But I'm trying to think how long ago it was when I went to my first counseling session. It was like a breath of fresh air. Like, having that perspective and using those strategies, it was like somebody unclogged something in my mind, and my thoughts process were totally different. And talk about the stigma of counseling, especially in our communities, Black folks, and especially in communities of faith who always say, "Hey, man, just pray it away." You can't pray everything away, man. That's the reality situation. You have
Yeah.
people that are trained and people that can help in these situations. Talk a little bit about the stigma.
So the stigma came about, and this is a serious thing. Psychology is fairly young. You're talking about 18th century. Psychology is not that old. Psychology was born out of philosophy and then the medical field, neuroscience. And so you got to understand their whole job is to explain something that can't be seen, predicting behavior. And so a lot of times when they first came on the scene, people thought they were like witches or soothsayers or just musicians, and and you got to understand they were really tapping into something. It was like, oh, I know what you're about to do. I can predict your behavior, or I can tell you what's wrong with you. And they thought they were like equivalent to palm readers. And so you got to imagine the church in the beginning hearing this. They, of course, their campaign is that we don't do that kind of stuff because they're using evil spirits to tap into, what's going on. They're using,
Soothsayers.
yeah, all this stuff. They're saying you're doing all this. But in actuality, we were using science.
Mm.
And people didn't really understand how, the research was able to identify certain patterns that would help us understand what's going on. Now, over the years, even the church has recognized, logical people have recognized how powerful, this is. You know what I mean? There's even the church is saying, we need to be aware of how our behavior cause and effect, and our body is keeping us from being able to get to our true potential.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to give a shout out, and while even while I was preparing for this interview, I saw an old video that you did with our the illustrious president of our college. Shout out to Oakwood University. Shout out to Dr. Pollard. A
Yeah.
very good interview that you guys did, man. But go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt. I just want to plug that in there.
Oh, no. That's a great, man. Thank you. And those who get on my Facebook, I'm gonna start weekly doing videos, helpful tips on just things I've learned over the years, techniques. I want to give them away. So just check that out. Follow me, and you'll definitely get those. But yeah, so what I was saying is nowadays the education I give people when it comes to counseling is equivalent to that old proverb where, this mom was cooking chicken and she cut the head off and tail off and then cooked the chicken. And then her daughter, not knowing why she did that, did the same thing. And then her daughter did the same thing. And finally, the husband asked the great grandma, "Yo, why is my wife always cutting off the good parts of the chicken?" And she laughed and she was like, "Well, back then we only had small pots." Yo, highly effective people go to counseling because they know the edge that it gives them. I mean, it's almost like not using $100,000 that someone wants to give you because you want to be able to do it yourself. I mean, I get that, but it's unnecessary. If you can find help, you need a counselor on speed dial. If you can have someone that can give you an edge in life, that can help you problem solve some of the most difficult tasks and give you information without you doing it yourself, without you trying to reinvent the wheel, why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. And I know you got listeners right now who are struggling with that concept. They're like, I need to figure it out. They won't say it loud, but in their heart, I'm like, I need to figure it out. I'm telling you, we need to design for that.
They'd be like, I just need to pray harder. I just need to vote harder. Like, nah, man, you need
yeah, it's like that other proverb where the dude was like, I'm gonna be a strong Christian, and it started raining, and a guy knocked on the door and said, "Yo, you need to evacuate." He's like, "No, I'm gonna trust in God." Then it gets to the second level, and the dude with a boat come by, and he was like, "Yo, let me take you to rescue." He was like, "No, I'm gonna trust in God." Then he gets to his room, and a helicopter comes, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna trust in God." He dies, go to heaven, and say, "God, why didn't you rescue me?" He said, "I came to you at your door. I came to you in a boat, and I came to you in a helicopter. What else was I supposed to do?" Sometimes God puts in front of you what you need, and He's equipped people like me and other professionals that know how to intricately, going back to trauma. Trauma becomes intricate into your life. It starts to engage in all aspects of your life, from survival, love, accomplishment, even being aware of yourself. And it takes someone who can see that complex equation and tie a thread that goes through all of it and start to eradicate that misconcept, that illogical concept, and start giving you rational concept to replace it.
Wow.
And then change happens. And so, yeah, I try to educate people that stigma is, I tell them, stop watching movies. Really, man, I think the movie industry has ruined us. Over the Cuckoo's Nest and A Beautiful Mind, all those, sitting in the hospital getting shocked to death. That's that has ruined therapy, man. It has.
Yeah. I want to ask you about so let's say someone's in a situation and they're not able to maybe afford a counselor. Maybe they got the Acme insurance that doesn't cover any insurance or any type of services or like that. What would you say is a good maybe secondary option to someone that maybe can't afford counseling?
So I'll say this. First off, counseling is about as expensive as a cell phone bill each month.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I mean, you think about it, the average counseling session, at least here on the East Coast, I don't know how it is on the West Coast, but it's going to range between $80 to $150 a session. So even if you don't have insurance, you want to make that investment, in yourself. And if
Mm,
you could pay your cell phone each month, even if you did one session a month,
mm,
that is worth it.
yeah.
It is worth it. Trust me. Now, however, even for some, I know that's tough. Not everybody has T-Mobile or AT&T. Some people have Boost Mobile and Track Phone. And I'll tell you this: there is a lot of online um, platforms who, for about $50, 25 to $50 a session, you won't get the same counselor,
Hmm.
but you'll be able to get a counselor almost on demand.
Okay.
And you can get on these online platforms that you can kind of just say, I need to talk to someone, I need a counselor. And once you get into this platform, you can subscribe, and I think it's like $50 a session.
Okay, cool, cool. I want to ask you about grief as we start to wind down a little bit. I've heard you talk ad nauseum about grief. You're very good in that area. Um, One thing COVID has forced us to do is grieve differently. We have to bury our loved ones differently. I've attended, well, I haven't attended, but I've been to one funeral, and we're having funerals on Zoom now. And when we do get together, we're only able to see each other from a socially distant method. How have you? I mean, how have you seen people now with this new way of grieving that we have now? How has that affected people?
We're still in it, man. I think we're doing a lot of studying. We're still holding our breath because you grieve after the aftermath, and we're still in it. So it's really important for you to understand that COVID isn't over.
Mm,
So there's a lot of people who've buried loved ones who haven't even started the grieving process because they don't know what's next. They don't have an end point. And that's what I'm seeing more than anything. A lot of people are numb. They're
yeah,
numb to COVID-19. They're like, I don't, I haven't, I'm not able to address it. So a lot of people are stuck in that anger, denial, and blame stage. I don't really understand. It hasn't hit home to a lot of people. And some people, it still doesn't ring to be real. There's some who are starting to kind of feel it. COVID has altered our reality.
mm,
The things that we thought were sure, the things that we thought were concrete, we are learning are not so steady. And I think we're still dealing with that. I mean, I know you want a better answer than that, man, but
no, that's good. That's kind
I
of
think
that's
that's where we are. We're still trying to contemplate our new reality.
yeah. Because I mean, I've had loved ones pass during COVID, and I feel guilty because it feels like I haven't even started to grieve for them yet. Because like we haven't buried them in the traditional way. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I feel guilty at times, like, man, I haven't even really grieved for them yet because
Mhm.
of this new way of burial, and as it goes back to what you were saying earlier, like COVID has forced us, if nothing else, have just forced us to survive. You know what I mean? And so I'm out here just trying to survive, man. So,
Yeah.
it's crazy the situation that we're in right now, man. But
So let me say this. I don't know how much time we have, but I do want to get this out.
yeah,
It's not all bad.
mm,
Yo, yes, COVID has hit, it's caused some trauma, probably no more trauma than the flu has. I'm just giving you a dose of reality for a second. But there's been some good too. It's forcing people to reinvent themselves.
mm,
I've seen more people create businesses, more people see, in the there's more openings now for people to be needed than
Mm,
ever before. And I'm encouraging people who come in that feel hopeless. If I could talk to anyone out there that's feeling hopeless right now, you're not hopeless. This is the time for you to get creative.
mm.
You should capitalize. Listen to me on this. You should capitalize on this issue that's going on with COVID. You should take this opportunity to figure out where your place in life should be and how you can contribute to mankind.
Wow.
You should reinvent yourself and take an. This is the time where you can take the chance to step out on faith and do something different. Don't let this opportunity pass.
Yeah, don't just kind of, I guess, feel sorry for yourselves, and it's crazy that you say that because now that I think back on everything that has transpired since March, and I've looked at all the things that I've done, all the things that, whether it be with with diet, with exercise, with starting this podcast back up, and start. I have, like I told you, man, I have 3 podcasts. So I mean, I have plenty of time to podcast now. That's
Mhm.
my passion. That's what I do. And if nothing else, man, it's shown me a sense of survival. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, you don't handle this. Like, okay, like let's do it. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that you said that because people need to be loved on, man. People need to realize, like, yo, you still here. You know what I mean? Like, you need to like pour into people. I was on a podcast this week with I call them my young proteges, right? So I've been covering sports for like 7, 8 years, and I got some people that are kind of new in the business, and they had me on to their podcast, and I always try to give them tips of how to do it, how to go about the business, and I was like, never come to a podcast, never come when you're in person, come to a podcast empty-handed.
Yeah.
All I did was I gave them a bag of like just goodies. You know what I'm saying? Like some candy, some chips, some mints, just like, yo, I got a bag for you, a bag for you. And I was like, whenever you get a chance, show people love, you know what I'm saying? Pour into people. I think that if we get to a point where we embrace that aspect of like, yo, we really got to start loving on folk because everybody is hurting in one way or shape,
Yep.
form or another.
And scared.
Yeah,
We're all
yep.
scared. Look, hold on. This is not, I don't care how I've seen grown men, the most barely men, the strongest, don't cry men. We're all scared. We all are scared right now, and we're putting on different faces. So you're not alone. And being scared is okay, but don't let it stop you from moving forward.
Got
You
you.
have to have courage with that fear.
Definitely.
You
I
have
want to
to
grab
have courage with that fear.
I want to grab a question real quick in the chat. It says, "Does our diet affect our mental health?"
Yeah, Lawrence, it does.
Hey, you want to let the audience know? You want to let the audience know who that is in the chat?
Yeah, no, Lawrence is my cousin, man. We've been challenging ourselves to try to go raw lately, and
Oh wow, how's
uh,
that going for you?
man, it's tough, man.
Let me
It
know
is
how that
tough.
goes.
It
God didn't
is
call me
tough.
there yet.
It's a shock. It's a shock to your system. Believe that. But of course, if when you've had a good day, when you've eaten right for a good day, and you wake up with a little bit more pep in your step, and your brain is working a little bit better, you're thinking clear, you're feeling good about yourself, you get more done.
Mhm.
Yes, it is done. And knowing that we still will overindulge, but still, everyone knows that when you treat your body right, is you're going to respond better. And once again, it's giving yourself the edge when you need it. If you're trying to really take yourself to the next level, You're trying to reinvent yourself. You're trying to get out of your depression. You're trying to reduce your anxiety. Give yourself every edge that you can possibly give yourself. Don't come at it half-heartedly. Put your all in it. Everything that you know to do, do it. And that will give you the strength to overcome what you're going through.
Cool, man. I appreciate it, man. P, man, this has been dope. You have dropped some jewels, my brother, some jewels, man. Uh, as we wind things down, man, just let the people know again, man, who are during this time, everybody's looking for answers. Everybody's looking for tips on just how to sustain, how to just tread water through this. And again, I thank everybody that's just check this out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. Make sure you go by and like JP's page, A Touch of Peace Counseling. Pete, give us just some final tips on man on people because people are hurting right now, especially with the news of Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
Um, just they're still dealing with COVID. Their kids are dealing with uh, uh, virtual school, which is a whole nother podcast in of itself. So give the folks some tips on how just to deal and maintain during this time.
Number one, time will rectify all problems.
Mm,
Let me tell you what I mean by that. I don't care. Right now, we're dealing with COVID, but time has proven that it will outlast any trauma or traumatic event that we will go through. I mean, you look at the Holocaust, you look at slavery, you look at wars, and all those things that we've gone through in the past, and time still marches on. Time still outwins those issues. So
mm,
you need to be able to be sure, reassure yourself that I need to stick it out, stick in there, hang in there. Time is on my side. Time is on my side. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to get all frizzled, and I'm not going to think that this is the end of the world. When that happens, it'll happen. There's nothing you can do about it. But until then, I'm going to remind myself that time is on my side. And as long as I'm working towards a goal, I'm on the right side of time. Second thing I would give you is this: cherish and be happy with the moments that you have.
mm.
Sometimes we spend too much time trying to get everything that is in front of us. It's why Chick-fil-A does so well? Because all they serve is chicken.
And there's some good chicken. It's some good
Yeah,
chicken, bro.
but the reason that they do so well, because they limit your options. Sometimes we have way too many options. We're trying to do so much that we can't enjoy what we have.
Mm,
We can't appreciate what we have. Sometimes it's good to limit your options. You make better choices when you limit your options.
mm.
Way better choices. We don't need everything that's in front of us.
I like that.
Last but not least, and it's kind of similar to the second one, but it's a little bit different. Don't overindulge. Don't overindulge in the news. Don't overindulge in just the things that you do every day that you might feel is keeping you from going crazy. Don't overindulge. Have balance. Balance is key to
Mm,
success. What I tell my clients: divvy up their life. You got five major components to life. You have your family, yourself, your job, your God, and your goals. And start by giving each of those 20%. Give it each of those 20, and then balance them to where they function properly. But balance. Keep in mind all that you have to give, and make sure you give it even. And set good boundaries. Don't overwork yourself. Know how to say the day is over.
yeah, yeah. And
Know how to
we
say
just
the
spoke
day
about
is over.
yeah, and we
If
had
you
just
do,
spoke
if
about
you do
that.
those things, man, you'll stay healthy mentally.
My guy, man, you have brought it this evening. I appreciate this conversation has been dope, man. Uh, this has been dope, man. I got to bring you on again, man, so we can chop it up again, man. Because I know we've just hit the tip of the iceberg of mental health. You did, and it's just, I mean, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure seeing you grow through the years. You know, as a brother, as a friend. You know, we go back, man, and we have a collection of brothers, man, that we connect with and that we stay in tune with. We always sharpen each other. We laugh, we joke. You know, we go at each other at times, man. But I'm proud of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Same
I,
here, man.
much love to your family, your beautiful girls, your beautiful wife, man. I appreciate your business, and I appreciate you for coming on tonight, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, man. Anytime I'm there.
No doubt, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for checking us out. This has been the 285 podcast. If you missed the full show, it will be up on all of your streaming platforms, Spotify. It's on our YouTube page, so stay tuned for that. Like our 285 page. Next week, hopefully, I still haven't confirmed with my guest, but we're going to be talking about health and how to um, increase your body from a healthy standpoint. So it's gonna be a good show as well. For my guy JP Ruffin and Touch of Peace Counseling, man. Thank you guys for checking us out. We will see y'all when we see y'all. Peace and love.
Later.
All right.